Two extraterrestrial girls were bereft, without a haven, attire, or a glimmer of aspiration, until a compassionate earthling uttered, "Return home with me, both of you." The Tempest on Belt Traxxas 3 consistently carried toxic industrial discharge from the elevated sectors, descending with a somber nocturnal haze, acrid, greasy, and abrasive against the throat. It enveloped the narrow passages in a delicate layer of synthetic ice, transmuting respiration into vapor even within the corroded channels. Here, amidst the decrepit ruins of yesteryear's District 9, identities were disregarded, governance was absent, authority was merely a reminiscence, and security was attained through corroded fasteners and fortified entrances. Darren Holt had assimilated these precepts through arduous experience. He had arrived. To Veltraxxas 3, half a decade prior, his asteroid mining career imploded after a catastrophic rig failure claimed 6 lives and left his left leg fractured beyond repair. The pittance they called a pension wouldn't even cover a decent bunk on the more desirable moons. So he carved out a life from abandoned land and scrap metal, a place nobody else coveted. He resurrected broken machinery, power cells, cooling regulators, transport suspensions. Machines were uncomplicated. They didn't shriek, they didn't bleed, and they certainly didn't demand a smile. His workshop, a makeshift haven of welded plates and salvaged corrugated iron, was wedged precariously between 2 crumbling structures, riddled with leaks, but sufficiently balmy despite the odorous ambiance. Plasma vents hissed beneath the dense fog, and the piercing hum of neon signs crackled across rooftops like errant static. Just after dawn, he noticed them. Emerging to relieve himself, he detected movement under the decaying awning near his doorway. Initially, he mistook it for refuse, discarded rags or perhaps tattered insulation. However, it stirred. He stilled, fixating on 2 girls, huddled close, small, breathing, foreign. He advanced cautiously, boots crunching on the damp concrete. The taller of the 2 sprung awake, poised defensively, one arm protectively covering the other, her verdant skin almost glacial in its pallor, choppy raven hair streaked with vibrant violet, feline amber eyes narrowed, a war-bred chimera from decades past, her stance instinctively guarded, yet resilient, silent, merely staring. The smaller girl clung to her back, her complexion identical, face more cherubic, a cascade of tangled, silvery blonde hair, her back pressed against her exposed shoulders. Her arms were clasped tightly around the taller girl's waist, her fingers gripped with stark fear. They both sported tatters, literal fragments, ripped veils, decorative fabric strips barely obscuring their chests or thighs, ceremonial garb from some shrine or auction house. Far from ordinary apparel, Darren's mind sprung to action. They weren't residents, they weren't travelers, and nobody dressed that way unless they craved anonymity or were cruelly abandoned. He stayed silent, lest a sudden sound sent them fleeing. Here, where stillness felt like oblivion, he wrenched open the reinforced steel door, peering back with a resolute gaze. "You're clear to enter," he stated, his tone a low, unwavering command. "Both of you, absolute stillness. I'm not alerting anyone," he clarified, "but this door won't remain ajar indefinitely." He retreated inside, leaving a narrow opening. 10 seconds ticked by, then another 2. Cautiously they followed. The air inside possessed a subtle warmth, a faint hum emanating from the overhead heater. Salvaged LED strips cast a stark white light upon the workbenches. Tools neatly adorned the walls, while a dismantled mining drone occupied the center of the space. Guts spilled across the floor, exposed like a patient undergoing surgery. Beyond the makeshift divider, a narrow cot, a barely functional kitchenette, and a sink anchored to the corner existed. Darren avoided direct eye contact, moving with purpose, offering no inquiries. Retrieves 2 large shirts from a crate, placing them near the heater. "Wash up if you want. Food's available. Don't damage anything," he stated, still met with their silent, frozen forms. Observing the statuesque one, evidently more vigilant, she acted swiftly. Grasping the shirt while protectively shielding her sibling, she inhaled deeply, surveyed the chamber, then guided the petite girl towards the basin. Their movements mirrored creatures of the wild, cautious, silent, meticulously scrutinizing their surroundings. The cascade of water resonated, intertwined with soft respirations and the damp cloth. Darren retreated to his workbench, resuming work on the circuit board he'd been soldering the prior evening. His hands were unwavering, yet his mind raced. Where did they originate? For how long had they been exposed? Why didn't they flee upon hearing his voice? A torrent of inquiries flooded his thoughts. Darren found them entwined on the cot, still damp in the roomy shirts. The smaller one slumbered, nestled beneath the taller girl's chin, who fixed him with an unwavering, intense gaze. It was mid-morning when a loud knock echoed. "Hey, open up, Darren!" He recognized the voice of Malvek, a local scav dealer notorious for his connections to underground auctions and his appetite for salvage, especially women. Darren reluctantly rose and opened the interior door. Wagered a credit, recalled it secured. Sector 11's whispers rise. "Halt! Dismiss hearsay!" 2 goons roam, glistening hides, unmarked. So what if? Seen them? A federal duo might fetch a month's worth of gas, delivered to justice. Darren's resolve hardened, wrench in hand. He lunged from the hatch, confronting the speaker directly. "They're not here." Grin peered past him. "Not quite yet, perhaps." Darren hoisted the wrench, tapping the steel doorframe sharply, the sound reverberating through the alley. "Trick Sector 11, he reiterated. Grin put up his hands. All right, just inquiring. No need to get so jumpy." He departed, didn't press the issue. Darren secured the shutter, turning to find them huddled behind the workbench, eyes wide and silent. The younger one's lips quivered as she murmured something in Dendric, soft, musical, and unintelligible. The older girl maintained unwavering eye contact. He set the wrench down. "No, nobody breezes in here without consulting me," he stated softly. They remained silent, but the taller girl's shoulders visibly relaxed this time. Later that evening, Darren discovered them asleep once more, curled even tighter together, yet seemingly less fearful of being snatched away. He remained seated, his hands gently resting on his knees, observing the heater's gentle red radiance dance across the floor. He couldn't articulate why he'd provided sanctuary, nor what the future held, but he'd witnessed the brutal fate of those abandoned by society, lacking clothes, shelter, and any semblance of hope. And tonight, at the very least, he'd changed that. Prevent a repeat. The shop's silence, thick, taut, charged like a live wire linking 3 wary individuals. Darren dozed upright, ever vigilant, a watchful eye on the girls entwined under a thermal blanket, ensuring their continued, quiet existence. Remained steadfastly as the dawn advanced gradually over Velt Traxus, where meager light seeped through metallic blinds and the pervasive industrial murk. Darren arose, stretching his shoulders, and quietly approached the kitchenette. Heat flash ration packs and intensely synthetic coffee provided enough sustenance to ward off the chill. He prepared 3 cups, but this time, instead of leaving theirs by the heater, he carefully carried them over and placed them on the crate next to their cots. The smaller one, he resolved to call her Lynn, reminded him distinctly of a girl he'd once known on the lunar rigs, exhibiting an initial hesitation. Her sea-blue eyes blinked. Her eyes retained a distant, unfocused sheen. The aroma of coffee registered before any movement, yet her hand extended with cautious deliberation, as if anticipating its removal. The taller figures behind her stirred warily, their vigilance unwavering, tension palpable. "I require nothing of you," Darren stated simply. "Drink, stay warm, rest. That's all." The reassurance failed to soothe their apprehension. The untamed one, reminiscent of the Rava girls he'd heard slavers label back in his youth, a time of foolish idealism when he believed salvation was within his reach. She cocked her head at an inhuman angle, unblinking, assessing him as if anticipating a price tag to materialize. "I'm no sanctuary," Darren stated, "yet you're indebted to me for nothing, not sustenance, flesh, or speech." Rav's shoulders eased imperceptibly, just enough for Lynn to lean on her fully. He noticed faint bruises around her ribs and hip beneath the loose shirt, slender red welts, marks of restraint, perhaps auction collars. Someone had attempted to commodify her, and deserved retribution. Then torment. He hadn't solicited its origin, not at this juncture. The query lingered unspoken. Lynn's voice, gentle and worn, broke the silence. "Will you betray us?" "Absolutely not," Darren affirmed, his tone resolute. "But why?" she pressed, apprehension palpable behind her. "You're complete strangers to us." He steadied himself against the workbench, savored a sip from his mug, and met her gaze. "The people who abandoned you to the biting cold lacked something vital. That was sufficient reason for me to intervene. Not with fanfare, but with a subtle, almost imperceptible shift in their demeanor, less callous, more compassionate." Lynn glanced down at her coffee once more, blinking as if questioning her own reality. Ravit remained silent, as always, but her breathing had normalized. He devoted the remainder of the morning to preparing a space in the shop's corner, retrieved a spare heater from beneath his tools, and discovered an unopened set of blankets from the last shipment. The resupply mission unfolded with understated grace, devoid of fanfare, simply offering them agency. A corner to claim, a sanctuary, not his dominion. Gratitude was absent, expectation non-existent. Noon ushered in approaching footsteps, a deliberate cadence echoing in the alley. Heavy footfalls betrayed 2 figures, one lithe, one robust. Murmured voices, though muffled by Darren's thin walls, carried fragments. "Shop's still open. Heard he's got company. 2 girls? Dendril, perhaps? Keeping them all to himself." Lynn recoiled, Rava already alert, barefoot, gliding toward the window slit, a phantom of silence. Like a blade, Darren intercepted her arm before she advanced further. "They're merely conversing," he reassured. "Should they knock, I'll manage it." Ravo recoiled, her gaze sharp with apprehension, yet lacking rebellion. Darren realized he had to make a crucial decision, not only for their immediate security, but for the days to come. If they remained, someone would inevitably come searching. Individuals akin to Grin Malvek never disregarded a potential lead. And the girls he perceived clearly now. weren't simply runaways. They were escapees. He required the unvarnished truth. Once the alley was deserted, he rejoined them, sitting across from them on the floor. No barrier between them, no implements in sight, just open hands. Weary, taciturn, and forthright, he inquired, "Unburden yourself. Recount what transpired. Disclose your origins. Who seeks you?" Lin glanced at Rava. Rava scrutinized him intently, then at long last, her voice emerged, coarse, parched, on the verge of cracking. "We were procured for a diplomat, a breeder, exquisite high society attendees. He rescinded, deemed me excessively untamed, her too delicate." Her jaw tightened. "We were discarded near a freight depot 3 nights prior. No funds, no identification. We fled." Darren betrayed no outward emotion, yet a subtle alteration occurred within him. "You possessed identification tags," Rava demurred. "Implants, fresh merchandise, off the books." "They'll be scrutinizing," he stated grimly. "They always scrutinize," Rava retorted, "until we're shackled once more." That sealed his choice. "We'll rectify that." Lin inquired, bewildered. "Rectify what?" "Their grasp on you," Darren elucidated. "No identity, no history, no leash. Then you acquire identities, histories, a complete dossier. I've orchestrated this before." "Why would you intervene?" Rava probed. "Because I possess the capability," Darren responded, "and because nobody else dares to." The heater hummed softly. Outside, fog crawled through the alley, dense and ominous. Yet inside the shop, the chill felt less biting for the first time. That evening, he ventured into the rear chamber, emerging with 2 generously sized thermal shirts, adorned with visible repair stitches. He placed them gently on the cot. "You're not simply sheltering here," he stated. "This is your home now, if you desire it." Lin's eyelids fluttered rapidly, as if concealing a surge of emotion. Rabbit remained still, yet an hour later, the subtle creak of the cot betrayed movement. Both were clad in the shirts. The word "safe" remained unspoken, yet it permeated the atmosphere, an unspoken promise suspended in the air like bated breath. With each glance they cast his way, unwavering, trust tentatively began its awakening. The following dawn arrived bleak and ashen. A dense fog veiled the world, obscuring the street like a fading dream. Darren secured the shutter bolts and scanned the still perimeter cams. Only corrosion, vapor, and the wind's metallic scrape against the cityscape. Within the workshop, the heater droned, a constant companion, and the scent of soldered copper lingered. He labored meticulously, his hands dancing over a fractured circuit hub, yet his thoughts wandered. Rava and Lin sat perched on the cot's edge, clad in thermal layers, their hair faintly moist. Words remained unspoken, yet their presence filled the space, no longer avoided his gaze. The silence between them had evolved. It wasn't guarded. It was pregnant with anticipation, a silent vigil perhaps for a revelation. Rava shattered the stillness, her voice even. "Curious for more, aren't you? You're poised." Darren glanced up, not refuting it. "Only if you truly desire to share," she said, offering a delicate nod, not of subservience, but as though consciously opting for clarity. "We are not sisters," she commenced, "not through shared lineage." Reclining slightly, she folded her arms. Lin observed her from her position near the heater, nestled with her knees drawn close. "I was abducted from Valari Prime, a jungle mining outpost. My mother, a civilian botanist, vanished one day. The following day, slavers invaded the sector. They sought robust females, individuals who wouldn't falter under duress. I was 12. Her voice remained unwavering, devoid of emotion, as she continued. They placed us in a caste program, cybernetic enhancements, not identification chips. We were conditioned to be compliant, follow orders, and remain unobtrusive. When I resisted, their methods shifted from training to brutal suppression. They fractured my ribs on 2 occasions and seared my arm, yet I maintained composure. She subtly raised her shirt, revealing faded scars beneath her ribs. Darren remained unfazed, familiar with such sights, yet his gaze remained fixed. I was trafficked twice and only escaped once. The second trafficker attempted to sedate me. I retaliated by shattering his jaw with a chair leg and fled. Darren observed her in silence. Rava glanced at Lynn. Lynn's voice was hushed, filled with trepidation. She discovered me. I was raised in a... Ellorin's moon temple offered sanctuary. They promised celestial companionship for exemplary service. I embraced it, dreamt of divine favor. She paused, regret etching her face. I was deemed inadequate, lacking resilience for interstellar ventures. Thus, I was relegated to storage, cramped cages devoid of time, only relentless heat and chemical schedules. Darren's jaw clenched. The silence became my norm, she whispered, until Ravi arrived. They declared us a match, yet she never acknowledged my existence. Initially hesitant, I persistently sought connection, driven by an intense longing to banish solitude. Rava murmured softly, adding, "She prevented me from executing the handler that evening." Darren reclined, contemplating the nuances. "You arrived as a duo?" Raven gave a curt nod. Clad in silk, veiled in slumber dust, we were escorted to a diplomat's lavish suite. He remained aloof, merely observing me, pronouncing my gaze predatory, then dismissing us as flawed. Subsequently, we were abandoned in a desolate freight zone, a mere 3 blocks distant. Darren stroked his bristly beard, the rough texture scratching against his skin. "Fingers that was 4 nights ago. 3.5, how did you endure?" I pilfered a burner cloak from a deceased scoff. Lynn discovered a fractured radiator behind a vendor's booth. We consumed paste remnants from her ruptured tubes. Then we witnessed the heat emanating from your bay. You didn't expel us. He pondered briefly. Every syllable correlated with the contusions, the reluctance, the stillness you possess. No trace, implants, no biometric identifiers. Rava dissented. We were off record. Undocumented merchandise is prevalent in the outer caste bazaars. Simpler to vend when no one's inquiring, Darren. Eyes darted to the data panel beside his workstation, accessing the empty family registry form. He paused, unmoving. "I'll begin the documentation tonight," he promised. "Forged household certificate, dependency affidavit, and biometric record excerpts. You'll require fresh identities." Rab arched a brow. "Why?" "Because the next Inquisitor will unearth a legitimate record, not mere phantoms," he responded. Lynn appeared lost. "You'd register us as family?" "Precisely. Paperwork triumphs over kinship beyond this point. Authenticity comes with the correct documentation," he stated firmly. Ravis scrutinized him carefully. "You'd fabricate the truth for our sake?" "Affirmative," he confirmed. "Fabricated for the gravest outcome. No gratitude was offered." She merely drifted, traversing the space to find solace against the doorframe. her gaze fixed on the street through the narrow steel shutter's gap. Should they locate us, they'll arrive with nets, stunners, restraints. Then I'll construct swifter locks, Darren stated, understatedly. Lynn exhaled, her voice a fragile whisper. You transcend the rest. Darren offered no reply. As the girls slumbered, nestled beneath patchwork blankets, he remained vigilant at his console, crafting, modifying, forging, years of clandestine tech expertise now proving invaluable. Precious now, bygone contacts faded, admin credentials, a fabricated registry file, 6 relentless hours, yet the system emerged pristine, deceptive enough to outwit conventional scans. Raveled Traxus, a documented dependent, salvaged from an illicit off-world work camp. Linvel Traxus, same dossier, revealing profound emotional scars from caste conditioning. Both wards of Darren Hull, a local mechanic. He absorbed it once, archived a safeguard. He didn't fully grasp their significance, not yet. But with each passing day, they'd become more difficult to seize, and that sufficed for the moment. The downpour commenced unexpectedly. Beltraxis 3 remained. Authentic atmospheric conditions prevailed. Discharge from shattered skyscrapers, chemical haze emanating from industrial coolers, and manufactured precipitation seeping from the highest levels. Tonight, however, the deluge possessed an undeniable weight, hammering the rooftop with a relentless cadence resembling forceful blows upon metal. Inside, Darren secured the shutters preemptively. The unnerving silence of the street signaled impending trouble. Rava, characteristically defiant, honed a salvaged blade at the workbench with focused intensity, her gaze fixed warily on the entrance, as if awaiting retribution. Lynn remained, huddled near the heater, enveloped in Darren's generously sized coat from yesterday. She observed condensation tracing delicate patterns on the window. A day of silence followed Darren's return from the food run. He emerged from the back room, clutching a secure ration box and a low-frequency transmitter. Storefront across the alley took a hit last night, he stated. Tool crates vanished, no fingerprints. Cams were dark. The girl's delayed reaction spoke volumes. Someone's meticulously surveying the area, Ravet observed, her muscles tightening. Could be scouts, looters, or something far more sinister. He then casually tossed the transmitter onto the table. Regardless, we're locked and loaded. No one's snatching you without a brutal brawl. You claimed we were wraiths, Lynn murmured. Wraiths aren't hunted. Darren knelt. Indeed. Now you're identified. You're prized. Someone might just want to re-enslave you. She averted her gaze, clutching her coat. Their arrival? What's your plan? Depends on their approach. Rava expelled a humorless sigh. You'll suffer for us. I've endured pain for far less. Later, the storm devolved into a persistent hiss. They spoke sparingly afterward. Darren took the initial watch, stationed by the door with a customized wrench rifle resting in his lap. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was expectant, deliberate, as if everyone braced for an unknown event. Near midnight, it occurred. A sound too muted for regular footsteps, yet too substantial to be wind. Darren was immediately upright. The girls were already vigilant. Rava brandished her blade. Lynn remained crouched, eyes darting. Darren advanced toward the back entrance. The hatch, seldom disturbed, bore Rust's kiss. He strained, ear pressed to the cold steel. A faint click, not wind. A lock being meticulously compromised. Spinning, he hissed, "Back corner, stay low." Rabbit, wordless, shielded Lynn behind towering crates. Darren seized the override bar, securing it. A searing line traced the hatch, a thermal blade's brutal kiss. He didn't hesitate. A furious kick, metal screaming against metal, and then a wrench rifle's defiant roar through the gap. Frame a silent scream, then fading footsteps. He resisted the urge to pursue, patiently waiting a full 10 minutes. Finally, he disengaged the override bar. The alley was desolate, save for shimmering puddles and a clinging mist. Back inside, Lynn trembled violently, cradled in Rava's arms. Rava murmured something in an unfamiliar tongue, a low, unwavering cadence of comfort. Her voice, unusually gentle, soothed Lynn. Darren lowered his rifle, his breath ragged, sweat beading on his brow despite the chill. "Just a scout," he said, his voice strained. "But they'll be back." Rava's gaze locked with his. "You should have allowed them to breach the door. I could have managed the situation. You are not. We only resort to lethal force as an absolute last measure," he declared, his voice resolute. "You're not some savage beast. Disregard the cruel names they might have branded you with." His words triggered a visible reaction. She blinked, started to speak, then fell silent. Approaching her cautiously, he softened his tone. "You're secure here now. I won't let harm come to you." Rabbit maintained eye contact, her breath even, but he detected the faintest tremor in her hands. She seemed aware of it too. Her next question, surprisingly calm, was, "Why is this significant to you?" He paused, then admitted, "I failed to save the last girl I saw abducted. This time, I intervened." The confession lingered between them. Rava abruptly reached out, her gesture not threatening, merely. Slowly, meticulously, her fingers grazed the edge of his hand. Darren remained still. She held her hand there gently, tentatively, like encountering warmth anew. Lynn observed in quiet anticipation. Something shifted, unspoken. No words exchanged, only the space between them diminishing ever so slightly. No demands, no haste. Yet an exchange occurred between the three. A question hanging in the air, an answer lingering. Darren inhaled deeply. "Get some rest. We're relocating the backup shelter to lower storage tomorrow. This place is compromised." They nodded, accepting his directive. He started to turn, but then, before he made it to his bunk, Lynn's voice, a hushed whisper, reached him. "You failed to prevent the last one, yet you didn't abandon us." He paused, observing the relentless rain, yet inside, the spectral feeling had vanished. The storm's lament faded, but the sky remained a canvas of bruises. Runoff drenched the streets, and a heavy mist clung low, poised to descend. Darren, positioned at the back shutter, scrutinized the alley through a sliver in the steel. Stillness. No shadows. Vigilance remained. The shop was dangerously compromised. The thwarted intrusion underscored the urgency for a contingency plan. Their abandoned subsurface storage offered refuge, long sealed, frigid, half-submerged, and filled with decaying drone components and shattered racks. However, a concealed side hatch, obscured by fallen equipment, rendered it invaluable. He dedicated the subsequent hour to clearing the top access point. Rava, unbidden, lent a hand, wordlessly shifting crates with incredible ease. Meanwhile, Lynn remained above, silently arranging heated thermal shirts, finding solace in the soft warmth of the burner kettle. After drying, she maintained a vigil at the stairwell. They all sensed the tranquility had vanished. The pretense shattered. Down in the lower bay, A scent of oil and decay lingered, yet it was adequately dry, and the lights remained functional. Darren carried the bedding, Rava followed with provisions, and Lynn arrived last, her arms overflowing with blankets retaining the heater's residual warmth. Later, once settled, Darren perched on a plastic crate, meticulously operating a fusion cutter with gloved hands, while Rava stood watch near the exposed pipeline, arms crossed, her scarred back turned. Braced against a crate, she observed, "You've got a military background." He glanced up, then back at the cutter. "No," he replied, "but your posture, it speaks of someone who's taken lives." A beat of silence followed. "Does my past truly concern you?" he finally asked. "Intensely," she admitted. He deactivated the tool, met her gaze. "Mining disaster. We lost good people. I bore the weight of those we couldn't save. That kind of burden reshapes you. It etches itself into your very being." Rava acknowledged with a measured nod, her voice gentler. "So that's why you remain unflinching, even when I intrude into your personal space. You haven't smiled either. I've come to realize it's best not to expend the effort." Rava advanced, not invading his space, but deliberately closing the distance. She was close enough that he could catch her unique aroma, a blend of scorched spices and aged metal. Her hand grazed his arm, not a flirtation, but an assessment. "You haven't attempted to touch me," she observed. "Not even once. You anticipated my actions. Everyone always does." He met her gaze steadily. "I don't take what isn't offered. If you ever decide to give me something, I'll patiently await your true intention." She maintained eye contact before glancing down, marking the first instance of her stepping back. Volunteering that fateful night, water dwindled critically. The upstairs heatsink, fractured by the tempest, necessitated Darren diverting intake via the aged backup purifier. Corpse cleansing became arduous, yet essential. He descended with a basin, water gently heated, placing it centrally. Lynn initially demurred, but as Darren focused on the comms, she advanced. Shedding her shirt, ribs emerged, softly smooth, yet faintly bruised, yellows surfacing. Cautiously, she wet a cloth, dabbing arms and collarbone, shoulders lifting, and gasped with shallow breaths. She paused, her gaze fixed on Darren's back. "Could I possibly borrow a clean shirt?" she inquired, her voice barely audible. He nodded, indicating the top crate, neatly folded. She, still dripping, traversed the distance behind him. He remained motionless. She retrieved the shirt, hesitated for a fleeting moment, then unexpectedly leaned forward, resting her forehead against his shoulder. An innocent, genuine connection, free from eroticism or calculation. "I yearn to shed this feeling of shame," she murmured. "You deserve freedom from it," he responded. Rava observed from their periphery, refraining from interruption. However, as Lynn retreated to the blankets, Rava followed suit, maintaining a silent vigil. Didn't shed all her garments, just peeled off her top layer, plunging her arms into the cool water. She met Darren's gaze. "If I ever reach out," she stated, crisp and clear, "it won't stem from weakness. It'll be born of my own volition." "I know," he replied softly. She gave a curt nod. "And I suspect I will." Darren stilled, holding his breath, as something profound awakened within him. Not mere craving, but a nascent hope. That evening, they huddled intimately together beneath a shared blanket, initially justifying it as a shield against the chill. The gap between them eroded swiftly as Lynn nestled against his chest, her sigh a whisper into his shirt. Raval stood close behind, not touching, yet her breath graced his neck. Sleep eluded him for what felt like an eternity, and when it finally arrived, he found himself no longer isolated. The alert arrived belatedly. Darren detected a signal from a compromised maintenance drone that morning. This signal, though faint, encrypted, and disguised as routine shipping chatter, concealed a name deep within the static. "Live return prioritized," a voice echoed. "No visible harm to Raval. Injuries reported. The original purchasers, once informed, required no further explanation." He deactivated the comm unit, extracted the battery from the transmitter, and secured the casing in resin. Descending to the storage bay, he found the girls silently consuming rations from a heat pack. Lynn was once again barefoot, enveloped in one of his jackets. Rava meticulously sharpened a screwdriver into a fine spike. Neither displayed surprise upon seeing his expression. "They're inbound," he stated. "Numbers?" Rava inquired. "Overwhelming," he replied. Rava offered a single composed nod. "Then we evacuate, Darren." Without protest, he crouched near the equipment boxes and retrieved the untouched emergency kits from the past half-decade. Heat-shielding wraps, spare credentials, revitalizing tablets. He tossed one to Rava, another to Lynn. Both remained composed. Lynn gripped the wrap tightly, her voice almost inaudible. "Will they dissect us? Isolate us?" "Not on my watch," Darren asserted. Their faith in him was unwavering. The strategy was rudimentary, urgency trumping accuracy. They'd breach the bottom vent shaft beneath the maintenance bay, navigate 3 meters into the obsolete filtration conduits, and emerge at the derelict tram interchange 3 blocks eastward. Darren had hidden a weathered transport. Haller was there years ago, almost consumed by forgotten scaffolding. Remarkably, its fuel cell remained. If operational, they'd achieve complete energy independence within a mere 10 minutes. Ravel took the lead, a knife concealed beneath her belt. Lynn hesitantly followed, her hands trembling as she navigated the tight space. Darren brought up the rear, sealing the hatch with his welder before descending into the vent. The confined area was oppressively loud, the metal protesting under their weight. Midway, the distinct sound of numerous boots echoed above them. Ravel froze, whirling around, her eyes radiating an eerie glow in the darkness. Darren emphatically shook his head, urging, "Keep going!" "Moving." She faltered momentarily, then complied. At the exit, he eased the panel open, scanning for patrols. Only smoke and debris-littered alleys, bathed in the crimson glow of emergency lights, reflected on the slick concrete. They sprinted, not recklessly, but strategically. 1 turn, 2 alleyways, down a crumbling stairwell, into the tram lot. The hauler remained, concealed beneath cloth and scaffolding. Darren yanked off the tarp and slammed his hand onto the access pad. It hissed open. Inside, it was confined, dust-laden, and frigid, yet a haven for now. They scrambled in, doors sealed, engines hummed to life. He punched in the sequence. Burn code coordinates danced across the dash. "We have 20 minutes," he stated, "before we vanish." Lynn collapsed, embracing her knees, shivering uncontrollably. Rava pulled her close, murmuring reassurances, her own hands trembling. Darren watched them, knees drawn up. He'd encountered countless survivors, yet never like these. They looked at him, not with fear nor distrust, but with something more profound: faith. After a moment, Ravel raised her head. "You could have escaped solo. I would have perished. You gambled everything for us. You aren't chattel. You're cherished. You're mine to safeguard," he declared. Rava gazed at him, then edged forward deliberately. Wordlessly, she extended a hand, and he accepted it. Lynn, tears glistening in her eyes, nestled beside him, resting her head on his shoulder, fingertips tracing his chest. Darren embraced her, drawing Rava nearer with his other arm. They shared no words, only intimacy. Kisses were secondary. The essence was in being held, in being possessed. In the holler's darkness, they lay entwined as the engine hummed, their bodies connected, their breaths synchronized, their beings merging. Heat intensified, permeating aged fabrics and weathered skin. Rava murmured, "Once we've escaped this." Darren countered, "It's not over." She refined, "When we discover a fresh start, I crave abundance." He gazed at her. "You shall have it," he vowed. "Both of you will." Lynn nestled against his shoulder, whispering, "I yearn not to tremble with fear when I reach for you." "You won't," he assured. She tilted her face up, her lips brushing his neck. A tender, heated tremor. Rava mirrored the gesture on his other side, with unwavering boldness. Darren's eyes fluttered shut, not from apprehension, but from the profound sense of sanctuary he finally discovered. The hauler ascended, and united, they bid adieu to Velraxis III. 3 weeks later, they touched down on Hav Station, a derelict mining outpost transformed into a liberated zone, discreetly positioned along the periphery of neutral territory. Here there were no customs to declare, no enslavement agreements to sign, no caste systems to endure, only tranquility, ancient passages, and extended winters. Darren traded the hauler for living quarters on the dome's edge, a robust metal dwelling with insulated walls and a functional solar panel, and a pristine water source. The cabin wasn't fancy, but it boasted a lockable door, a functioning heater, and sufficient space for 3 souls to finally feel a sense of belonging. Veltraxis was a forgotten name, its memories buried in silence. Rava dedicated her days to salvaging materials, dismantling old conduits under the sun's glare, her knives an ever-present extension of herself, boots stained crimson with the planet's dust. A quiet intensity radiated from her, a honed control that replaced raw tension. Sometimes she'd stand for hours, silently observing the distant dome horizon. Lynn, alongside Darren, expertly tackled the task of rewiring the roof panel grid. Softly, when she believed she was unheard, her voice possessed a delicate yet stunning quality. Darren, captivated, never broke the spell. Nights were spent meticulously organizing provisions, preparing meals from meager rations, and neatly arranging clothes before she shed her garments without a hint of self-consciousness. As the initial week concluded, the barrier of separate blankets dissolved. By the second, solitude was banished from their sleep. Finally, the third week ushered in a night free from the chilling cold, gnawing hunger, and the haunting dread of intrusion. Ravis remained by the window, vaporous wisps of steam from her shower still ascending languidly. The skin she graced was none other than Darren's vintage shirt, sleeves casually rolled, the hem flirtatiously skimming her thighs. Her scars, now a testament to transformation, resembled choices etched in time, not chains. Lynn perched on the bed, bare legs gracefully tucked, damp hair cascading over her shoulder in soft curls. Her expression held a tender expectancy as she gazed at Darren, the way one looks at a steadfast soul who refused to relinquish their grip, even when prudence dictated otherwise. He lingered in the doorway, shirt undone, hands resting idly. "The fear is gone," he observed gently. Lynn responded with a serene smile. Sleeping apart ignited Rava's slow turn. "You pledge to wait, to only take what we willingly offer." A solemn nod affirmed his vow. "Then claim us now," she urged, stepping closer, not from obligation, but from desire. Lynn crossed the space, her kiss a warm, unwavering breath of life. Arms encircled his waist, bare skin meeting his stomach. Rava pressed close behind, hands exploring his chest, her mouth finding his neck, a deliberate and gentle invitation. Their breaths synchronized. They ushered him towards the bed, not to possess, but to unite. Lynn reclined, drawing him down, her legs entwining around him. Rava followed, straddling him, one hand resting on his chest, the other caressing Lynn's thigh. The room was hushed, save for their breathing and the gentle friction of skin on skin. Warmth blossomed between them, unhurried, gentle, then intensifying. They moved in concert, without haste, without doubt. It was deliberate, not frantic, not yearning, but a conscious act. Lips met, hips swayed, fingers explored old wounds, and fresh starts embraced him as he moaned softly against Lynn's shoulder. They gasped when his hands traveled lower, tenderer, until their backs arched further into him. He murmured their names, not as a roll call, but as a sacred invocation. Rabbi kissed him deeply as she reached her peak, her body trembling against his. Lynn clasped his hand tightly and wept, not from agony, but from catharsis. It concluded in tranquility, a serene stillness. Later, they lay entwined in the shadows, tangled beneath the same sheet, their perspiration cooling as the dome lights faded. "I yearn to remain here, Lynn." "We will," Darren breathed. "I crave a new identity," Ravis murmured, "not the one I inherited." "Then let's forge one," Darren declared. "And we desire your input," Lynn added softly. Darren, deeply moved, kissed their foreheads tenderly. "We shall begin anew," he vowed. That night, they luxuriated in a genuine bed, escaping cramped corners and the confines of a cot. The dawn's first light and half painted their entwined forms, bathing them in linen's warmth. They remained still, at peace. They had discovered not merely liberation, but a shared existence. This time, nothing, ever, could snatch it from them. 47 days had elapsed. After their departure from Velt Traxxas's third, sufficient time had elapsed for prior patterns to dissipate, and for the seeds of trust to blossom. The modest dwelling on Have-Dome's periphery had evolved into a sanctuary, a shared haven. The electrical circuitry ceased its erratic sparking, the heating unit functioned seamlessly, and a diminutive yet resilient garden patch had begun to flourish near the rear entrance, a testament to Lynn's initiative. Rava bolstered the perimeter defense with salvaged metal, forging formidable spikes, prioritizing strength over aesthetics. On this particular dawn, Darren stirred to find both women entwined with him, Rava's limb draped possessively across his torso, Lynn's digits intertwined within his garment, their respiration synchronized, a symphony of tranquility. After an extended stillness, he stirred and prepared breakfast with understated care. They padded in, barefoot, adorned in comfortable loungewear, simple wrap tops and thermal shorts, prioritizing comfort over display. Ravok brushed a kiss on his cheek, cheekily pilfering his coffee. Lynn leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder as she tweaked the comm hub to stream vintage broadcasts. Words remained unspoken. They weren't necessary. Later they strolled the periphery, venturing just beyond the enclave to savor the wind filtering through the dome, their bare feet connecting with the earth unburdened by fear. Rava scaled a rocky outcrop and cried out to the heavens, reveling in the sound of her own voice resonating through the air. It marked the inaugural moment Darren witnessed her smile, unburdened by any semblance of reservation. Upon descending, she alighted gracefully beside him, seizing his hand without faltering. Lynn returned with 2 blossoms discovered amidst the debris, bestowing one upon his palm and the other upon Rav's hair. That evening, they collectively indulged her, partaking in a repast upon the floor, encircling a heating lamp, all 3 intertwined, resembling a labyrinth of limbs oblivious to their origins. Subsequently, as the lights waned and the dome exterior faded, silently, they glided towards the bed, unspoken understanding between them. This wasn't about urgency, fear, or even survival. It was pure, deliberate choice and profound connection. Rava initiated, her kisses tracing his neck, then his chest, each touch a conscious decision. Her shirt cascaded down, exposing smooth skin and the delicate scar over her ribs. She didn't conceal it. Instead, she guided his hand to it. Lynn, ever graceful, followed at a measured pace, her leg gently draping over his, her lips exploring his jaw, then Darren's lips, and finally, Rava's shoulder. Her body, soft, ample, and embracing, melded into theirs, like she was intrinsically woven into their lives. Darren kissed them deeply, his hands gliding down their spines, grounding himself in each hushed sigh and quickened breath. The room pulsed with warmth, bathed in the low glow of the wall lamp just beyond the dome. Outside, the dust storms raged, but here in their sanctuary, only their intertwined bodies stirred, propelled by a profound, unspoken desire, not a desperate need. Rava initiated the change, smooth and deliberate, like a choice taking form. She moved across Darren's lap, her legs framing his hips, her knees. Imprinted into the mattress on both sides of him, her shirt gaped open, revealing her chest. Her gaze locked with his, unyielding, genuine, not teasing. Her fingers danced along his jaw, lingering at his beard's edge. She leaned in, kissing him with absolute completeness, not gently. Darren was momentarily stunned, not resisting, but overwhelmed by the significance. Raval wasn't playing games or probing. She was completely surrendering herself, seeking recognition in her unique manner. Her hips settled against his, slow and deliberate, their breaths intermingling. His hands, gliding across her thighs, firm yet tender, anchoring her. She arched her hips, a soft gasp escaping as a surge of pleasure coursed through her spine. Clutching his shoulders, forehead to his, "I've never experienced this security," she breathed, her voice trembling but resolute. "I crave the power of choice, the freedom to linger. You're welcome to stay indefinitely," Darren murmured, his voice a deep, unwavering cadence, resonating with an emotion far deeper than mere desire. Lynn, now intimately close, pressed against Darren's back, encircling him with her arms, her hands tracing patterns across his chest. Bare skin traced his spine, her cheek nestled on his shoulder, lips softly kissing his neck as she inhaled his essence. Warm, utterly human, pristine. "You're my sanctuary," she breathed. Rava shifted, deliberately slower now, her thighs clenching as she discovered her tempo against him, her breath catching in short gasps. No haste, she relished each millimeter of intimacy, every surge of pressure, every deliberate motion she commanded. Darren's hand settled on her lower back, anchoring her as she began to sway with focused intention, her eyes drifting shut, mouth slightly ajar. With every subtle shift, her body vibrated, not with trepidation, but raw, exquisite feeling. Lynn's hands drifted lower, grazing Rava's hips, grounding her in the moment. They swayed in concert, not in perfect synchronicity, but in fluid accord, one guiding, one yielding, unspoken desires fulfilled. Rava tilted forward, palms settling on Darren's chest, beads of perspiration glistening in the dip of her collarbone. "This," she whispered, voice husky with emotion, "is the first time I've ever yearned to remain in control, to not be dismissed." Her body pulsed with anticipation. This time, she unleashed a deep moan from her core. Darren embraced her, allowing her free movement without constraint, focusing solely on rhythm and presence. Lynn kissed his neck, then Rava's shoulder, whispering, "You are exquisitely beautiful like this." Rava tilted her head, foreheads meeting in a silent, electric moment. Darren felt the full weight of Rava's thighs against him, her hips moving with exquisite, yearning grace. Lynn's arms encircled his chest, her body a warm press against his back, fingers tracing patterns, not to possess, but to intertwine. The bed swayed with each shared breath, each delicate movement, eclipsing the outside world. When Rava finally broke the connection, a gasp escaping her lips, turning into a tender, pleading sound. She nestled her head onto Darren's shoulder. He held her close, one arm securely around her waist. Reaching behind, he pulled Lynn closer. She shifted, melting into his embrace. Her kiss was a soft promise, a taste of salt and sun. She settled onto his lap, skin meeting skin in a seamless connection, like a shared breath. "I can't bear to wait," she murmured. No rush, no urgency, just a tender exploration. Fingers traced lines, hands discovered contours, lips danced on skin. It was slow, deliberate, real. Lynn yielded beneath his touch. His breath stirred her. Her fingers clutched the sheets as he pressed closer, enveloping her. Rava, still breathless, still shaking from the encounter, embraced them both, her eyes glistening, her voice thick with emotion. "You belong to me, both of you, and I swear, anyone who dares to steal this from me will face my wrath." As the aftermath settled, silence reigned. They remained entwined beneath the covers, skin glistening, limbs interwoven, hearts gradually harmonizing. Darren's hand gently caressed Rava's thigh, while Lynn nestled against his chest, her lips grazing his collarbone. Beyond their haven, devastation lay still, but within, three souls once adrift had discovered an unparalleled connection. Transcending mere survival or sanctuary, it was love. And now, an eternity stretched before them to embrace it.